morning, everybody. It's Friday, May 17th. This is the AgYield War Room. Dan Dempsey, and I'll be moderating today's session. As always, if you've got any questions or comments, please feel free to drop us a line in the chat area, and we'll be sure to get to it during the show. Quickly here, overnight markets had July corn up 3/4 at 457 3/4. July soybeans were up 12.28 1/4, and July Chicago wheat was up 4 1/4 at 667 1/2. Good morning, guys. It's Friday. We've made it. Not a whole lot in the way of fresh news here this morning. Dustin, maybe throw it over to you just for a few comments on overall the week, what we see coming into the end of the week here, and then we'll move it around the room here a little bit.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. I think, obviously we continue to kind of talk about this like a broken record a little bit, but we got really close to the $5 level. It's right around the 200-day moving average in that 495 region. And we think we've run up against a bunch of new crop hedging. We're still waiting to see what the funds did, Tuesday to Tuesday. Again, that report will come out this afternoon. But the last couple of reports, they've shown that they're willing to liquidate their short position. And we already think a lot of the transfer of ownerships happened from old crop selling up to this point. So, we're a little higher to start the day. And, I think we continue to see just anecdotal, evidence that, maybe that 90 million acre corn number is not going to increase when we get into that June report. We won't know that until the end of June. And I think a lot of people are looking at the recent rally and saying, oh, it's all due to planting delays. Well, if it's due to planting delays, why are beans, rising faster than corn? Why is the ratio staying above 2.5? I still would argue it's not just about planting. I think it's the market cleanup of that old crop position is done. And we have funds that are willing to not continue to press the short prior to the growing season. And we're still well below cost of production. So I just would be very curious to see what the market does from here. It's really kind of got a hold here from on the charts if it wants to try to keep going. But I would like to, I wouldn't like to have a strong opinion that it's just over because we got up here and failed. So.
That's good points. I was talking to somebody yesterday and they posed the question. We've alluded to it a couple times, well, multiple times on the show, with China not having any book on so far for new crop beans. What would you historically see at this point for them? I know it's obviously nothing now, but I mean, we should start seeing if there was going to be a program, they would be buying it through this time period. Is that fair assessment, or where are we at with that?
Yeah, it's a fair assessment. I mean, they usually get ahead of it. Justin's mentioned it a couple of times that China has been showing signs they're buying from the U.S., unofficially as a last resort as needed. So it's not uncommon for them to go front load that demand coming into a season where, by the time that we get to SEP 1, the new crop has a pretty good book on, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they won't be aggressive buyers of U.S. beans when we get to the new year. I mean, these are new year products still. So they can still hedge their, the product on the board. They can still get ownership that way. They just haven't contracted it yet. So I would say they're showing real signals that they're buying from the U.S. of last resort, as Justin's mentioned, and they've been very slow to buy old crop. I think that's almost a bigger issue, is that they've been kind of pulling back on what they're buying for old crop. I don't want to make too big of a deal out of their lack of new crop purchases just yet, just because there's still time for that to catch up.
That's a good point. Yeah, and because it's and the same is said for corn too. I mean, they have nothing on the books as well for corn. So
yeah, they hadn't been we go through a hour-long conversation of this, but they go back to 2018. We're in the middle of a trade war. China all of a sudden comes out with a 10-year census that says, oh, we have half the world's corn carryout overnight in the middle of a trade war, right? And then they say, but at the same time, they don't have enough inventory to maintain their ethanol program. So it's almost like blatant. We literally started publishing on the WASDE report world and then world minus China on the numbers for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we got to kind of take them at face value a little bit here. Prior to the 2020 phase one trade agreement, they had never bought more than 6-7 million metric tons of corn from us, only as needed. And then all of a sudden they became the world's largest buyer 2020, 2021 of corn coming from the US, over 20 million metric tons. And then we expected that to continue. I think China was doing that in part to satisfy phase one trade agreements, and that seems to have passed. So I don't think we can count on China as a big buyer of corn. Doesn't mean that we're not still seeing them use corn or buy it from Brazil, which is just the usage is still there, and they've changed up some of their rotation as well. We've had Mexico really, really hot this year, though. We've had a really good demand number. I don't think 14.8, which is the current demand estimate for next year, is too low. I think that's reasonable. And I think the 181 trendline yield is still in question from a lot of people. So the path to a carryout build, or at least a substantial one, I don't think is very clear. So to me, that's typical seasonal strength, getting the grower up to where they're comfortable maybe selling some of their grain, and they can show profitability at target yields. The minute we have any sort of issue going into a season, though, I think the farmer pulls back on selling, and the market is able to float higher if that's the case. So
yeah, I think there's a lot of uncomfortable selling this spring. So far this year, by well published, we've talked about a lot. Farmer being way undersold, going into the end of the year. Then you had another flush, leg lower in prices. So there's been, I haven't seen this kind of selling for a long time, just every day, just specifically corn. So I think there's a lot of that catching up after loan renewals, after, looking at working capital and just some issues that I'm sure a lot of people have had to talk to banks about. So I think being way more aggressive than normal for this time of year, and we've had a rally, right? So that's that big change of ownership, that kind of, all those things flow together. Beans, to your point, it shrugs off every bearish. It's kind of the opposite. It shrugs off anything bearish. Huge miss on crush. No exports out forward. Just keep going, and it shrugs it off. So, it's led by the July contract too. So it's being inverted. The flat prices is acting strong. So I think it's showing that there's the appetite for some, whether it's the hedge funds or somebody, to continue to add to longs here. So I think commitment to traders will be really interesting today.
Yeah. Ben, a couple thoughts from the East here to wrap up the week.
Yeah, it looks, we're probably a place and that has some of the worst areas for planting progress. A lot of still intermittent type of showers after a deluge early in the week. So it's just going to be, literally a day at a time over here as far as planning goes. Basis has definitely been softer on the rally, which would support farmer selling. I think that there's a lot to unfold here in this market over the next 6 weeks. Going into the next really big, when I look at, what are we doing to Memorial Day weekend on a smaller scale? What's the weather outlook like Sunday night? Then we look at July expirations, and we have a full week until the planning report. And I think the planning report is one that is definitely going to be an inflection point in our market. So, looking at ways to construct around those different risk points. And I think being patient, you look at the corn chart, and it's had a couple 2.5, 3 weeks here above the 20-day moving average. It tested it yesterday. That's kind of a softer trend following type of indicator that a lot of people follow. So yeah, I'm the same. I'm somewhat perplexed by soybean strength. I think in the end, it's going to be a very difficult long for someone. And I think that corn has got enough question marks hanging around it that it's probably going to, at a minimum, chop around here for a little bit. A lot of traffic on the chart between 460 and 475. So just trying to be patient as we move forward into, getting some clarity on a lot of these variables that exist in the corn market.
I was going to say, Ben in the East, how far east are you, Ben? You look like you're in
Looks like you're in Tahiti. Yeah.
It's
Unshirt Friday.
yeah, Unshirt Friday.
Irony.
Brian has Fun Fact Friday, and in order for the old guys to maintain some decorum around here, we need to have something that keeps a little levity for all the young bucks on this.
Yeah.
There you go.
They change our music to Buffett here to
Yeah.
start off the show here.
It's a good looking
That'd be-
shirt.
Thank you.
It's really good. Ryland, we were talking earlier this morning, and I guess this goes even across the Corn Belt and stuff, but we have drastically improved, the drought monitor, corn 12%, beans are 9%. But one thing to note is the cattle drought monitor has been increasingly getting better. And I think that was reflective in weights. So maybe touch on that a little bit and then give us a wrap up on the week for livestock.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think overall going into this week, just hearing about how planting progress is kind of slowed down by a lot of this weather, this kind of the heavy rains in some areas. So there was this implication that weights could possibly come down, and they just went the opposite direction. They surged at 923 for dressed steer weights, and that was versus 920 last week. So weights are still going up when traditionally we see weights just collapsing at this time of year and bottoming, close to Memorial Day. So, the question is, are they, is the bottom imminent? So, I mean, that's something I think that it's going to be a really big headwind for the market to deal with kind of in the longer term, just from a production standpoint. But obviously this is ideal feeding conditions that we're seeing right now. So I think it's something that the market's been very, very cautious about, what it actually means, but it's unprecedented to say the least, that weights would be going up at this time of year and staying at this level. We're 25 pounds, above the average, so that's a big deal. That's a lot of weight getting added to production kind of week to week.
So you figure it's good pasture conditions, but also, I mean, the winter by all accounts was pretty mild.
It's cheaper feed, it's better pastures, it's better feeding technologies, that just better practices in general. It's just all kind of culminated to that, I think, right now. But that certainly seems to be the case. Yeah,
Very good. How about hogs?
It's hogs, massive range yesterday in futures. The market's been pretty cautious here. The funds have been actively liquidating. Seems like they were just leaning way too heavily long kind of at this time of year, and the fundamentals just weren't really there to support it. You got cutout kind of drifting lower here. Ham prices were down pretty good. You just cannot find any real cash support. We're sitting right around 89 $89, and you got the board that just touched $1. So we really don't need to really see any convergence before the next 4 weeks. But that's a big discount, and it's just as of right now, the market's kind of got to prove itself a little bit. We need to see demand kind of pick up here, and I think that's the reason why just futures have really just stalled out right here at the 100-day. So maybe there's going to be a story later on. It's just nobody really realized, or nobody was expecting this kind of deviation, I think, at this point. So
very good. Appreciate the comments. It's Friday. We've come to the end. It's Fun Fact Friday. Brian Williams.
All right, Dan.
Buddy.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Happy Friday, everybody. Every morning, wake up, watch the news. Cicadas are coming. The cicadas are coming. So haven't seen any yet until this morning when I was walking the dog, and it looks like they are starting to emerge. So we're about to get about trillions of cicadas to come due to two separate broods are actually merging at the same time, the 13-year brood and the 17-year brood. So the first time this is happening together since 1803 that both are going to be coming out of the ground here. So looks like Central Illinois will be overwhelmed, to say the least. It sounds like they're saying that one of the loudest insects, 80 to 110 decibels. It's like sitting at a power tool convention. But they are, but be careful out there. It resembles, if you're cutting the grass, the lawnmower resembles the mating call. So you might be attacked, Johnny, a little violated possibly if you're cutting the grass out back. So be careful there. It's a good thing I don't have a bunch of grass.
Also, this one's for Ryland. They are safe to eat, Ryland. They are referred to the shrimp of the land.
Wow.
Yes, with a nutty flavor and a shrimp-like quality.
Look
So,
out, beef. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
There's a new insect in town.
Yes. So I knew you'd like that. And just on a separate note, Mystic Dan will be racing this Saturday in the second leg of the Triple Crown at the Preakness. So that is the number 5 horse. He is probably going to be the favorite. So make
Let's
that
go.
a note.
Yes.
Yeah,
Happy Friday.
what was the corn yield in 1803?
Yeah.
I don't think we're talking about that.
Good stuff, man. Thanks, Bri. That was awesome.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Just came into the open here. July corn down a quarter, 456 3/4. July soybeans are up 10, 1226 1/4. And July Chicago wheat's up 3.5 at 666 even. Every day that the markets are open, we're streaming live on X, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, 8:15 Central Time. Hope everybody has a great weekend, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Thank you.